Namaskaram and hello. My name is Justin Hoyt. You can also call me Mahavir Arjun Das, or Arjun is much easier. I'm outside one of the two or three Hindu temples in northern Alabama. Today I wanted to touch on grief and loss. So I once worked years ago with this fantastic child psychologist. I won't mention his name because I don't want to call him out like that, and maybe he's not happy about it. Great guy, great psychologist, and he once said that in life, one of the biggest lessons that we have to learn is how to deal with loss. And not just like loss of a loved one, but loss of our childhood, our youth, loss of time, loss of money, job, friendships, and even for parents, like, losing their kids as they grow up, because we all know, especially in our younger years, we change incredibly and very quickly, often. So it's a big part of life is learning how to deal with loss and going through those stages of grief around that. Unfortunately, I believe that in this chaotic, busy world, where we are constantly subjected to things that seem important but really aren't in the end, we're just constantly bombarded with those messages that we have to work towards certain goals or certain outcomes, which will be another topic that I'll touch on. Is you can't be attached or tied to an outcome. You just need to do the work, and what will be. And that is also something that ties in with loss and grief, because we feel sometimes that we are entitled to a certain outcome if we do things in a certain way or put a certain amount of work into it. Unfortunately, we're not. Unfortunately or not, we are not entitled to those outcomes. We are just entitled to doing the work. And that also ties in with the tenet of karma. And a lot of people, especially a lot of dichotomous Western thinkers, think they put karma in this negative context, almost always. And that's not the case. And that's another discussion that we'll talk about. Karma is, the best way to look at it is like physics. You do a certain action, there's going to be a certain reaction, all right? Or you do a certain kind of activity or labor, there's going to be a certain kind of outcome or the fruits of that labor that come about. So a lot of us will have grief when we don't attain something, when we're not successful at attaining something, especially if we put a lot of time, energy, money into it. So the other thing about loss and learning how to deal with grief is that it is not linear, right? It's not just this nice, smooth trajectory upwards towards getting better. It's often like this, up and down. As long as we put a straight line through those peaks and valleys, we hope that the trajectory is overall going upwards, right? Towards healing, towards understanding. But it can be, it varies for everybody. Sometimes, someone's doing all right, and then all of a sudden it dips. And it takes a while to get out of that rut and back up. And everybody's at a different speed, and there's all these other factors, that play into that healing process. There's a movie, and I'm forgetting the name of it. I think Nicole Kidman she's one of the main characters in this movie, and it's a younger couple that I think they lose their child, like the child was really young. And so they're dealing with that grief and that loss. And she befriends, I think it's not a relative, it's an older woman who also had lost a child earlier on in her life. And I think the conversation went along the lines of, Nicole Kidman's character is asking the older woman, how do you move on? How do you deal with that? And the older woman said, it's kind of like having a big, heavy, jagged rock in your pocket. At first, you're always aware that it's there. But over time, you start to get used to it. And eventually you get to a point where, you pat down your pocket and you're like, oh yeah, you're still there. That's not verbatim. I'm probably adding a lot more than there is to the actual line. But you get the point. And that is very much, I think, a normal process. And it should be a normal process where you don't just say, oh, well, that happened, that sucks, have one good cry and then be done with it and move on. That can also be unhealthy, as well as holding on to it and just not letting go. I've touched on this, I think, in the other videos so far, but we have an avoidant attachment style. And then on the other side, we have this anxious, insecure attachment style, right? So one is like cutting off really quick and too easily and just moving on. Like basically you're just shoving it, sweeping it underneath the rug or putting it to the side and, out of sight, out of mind. And then on the other hand, you have this anxious attachment style person who's just death gripping it. Like, no, I got to fix this. I can't let it go. So both need to work on that, right? And with grief and loss, people that move on very quickly often aren't actually dealing with it. They're just kicking the can down the road. The same with the anxious, insecure attachment style people. Like you're not letting it go and you're just kicking that can down the road. All right. So you're not actually processing it and dealing with it. So I would like to say, well, again, we'll touch on this more in depth. I'm hoping to bring people on to the podcast so we can actually have a discussion. Life is, we're looking at it as we're dealing with loss of one thing or another. However, I'd like to add that it's also about how to let in gains, positive gains, right? So yes, one thing is ending or you're losing something, but that's opening the door to something else, is it not? Right? You're still moving forward, whether you like it or not, right? The second that we are born, we're already walking towards the grave. That's just inevitable. And we are going to go through time and things are going to change. The universe is fraught with that, right? It's just, you look in the universe, the cosmos, we're not even this grain of sand in all of the cosmos. And there's constant changes going on. So it's all the way to the macro and all the way down to the micro, even the cellular atomic scale. There's just change going on. And us humans have a way of complicating and muddying those waters and making it very difficult because we get attached. Or we detach maybe too easily without processing things first. I know some people, especially that are Hindus, might say, no, total detachment is great. But I would counter that with, we are given a very special opportunity by being born in these lives, in this body, in this mind. And it is to resolve our karma, uphold dharma, fulfill our prescribed duties, and return back to the true source, the absolute. And you don't have to believe that. I'm just telling you as I believe it, as I see it. So either way, though, we're given an experience, an opportunity that not everybody else has. And there's this really great book that they made into an animation film. I think it's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Watch it. That's really great. Anyways, I wish you many blessings. Take care, and we'll talk soon again.